Life, culture, and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 with Neil Johnson on Vision.
This week, the Treasurer handed down a federal budget, and to quote Dr. Jim Chalmers from his budget speech, he said the global economy teeters again, on the edge, with a war that isn't ending, a global energy crisis that is escalating, inflationary pressures persisting, and economies slowing, some of them already in reverse. Well, some attention today to how we might prepare for the effects of harder economic times and applying some biblical wisdom around money. Well, our special guest is an outstanding communicator on budgeting and saving as a foundation of wealth. He says one of the main differences between the rich and the poor is how the rich make use of credit. So a conversation today around taming the credit card. Justin Pagotto leads a ministry called 2010, based on John 10:10, that says, "The thief comes only to steal and to kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full." And he always frames his insights with the next generation in mind, with a focus on raising money-smart kids. Justin Pagotto, let me say a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. Always a pleasure, and I love always hearing what people say as well in the callbacks. So ring away.
Yes, we'll look forward to some calls. Shortly we'll open our talkback lines. You might have your own bad experience or good experience with the use of your credit card or credit in general, as we'll be talking. Hey, saving and budgeting, Justin, even more important than ever, especially in light of the Treasurer's budget speech on Tuesday night.
Oh, absolutely. And we're in very interesting times. You know, I was talking to one of my financial advisor clients yesterday, and they were telling me, their kids' mortgages have gone up to $800 a week. So gone up by about $300 per week in these last interest rate rises. And, what was really interesting is, we've had interest rates coming down for the last 20 years. This is the first time that many young people with mortgages have actually seen the reverse trend and are actually saying, yes, interest rates can really go up.
Now, when we talk credit and when we talk savings, how do you contextualise the way we think about these things? Because sometimes they're just words that we use, but they have real deeper meaning. And you like to reflect on these things and give some real definition to the way we think about credit and savings and wealth and those things.
Yeah, and there's probably a few things to talk about. The first one is savings in general. Okay, so looking at what is a need, what is a want, and we live in a first world country where there's a bit of a joke about smashed avo, the right to a smashed avo breakfast. But what really is a need and what is a want? And I've had clients where I had one particular client who was earning over $300,000 a year and could not save anything. And then other clients who are only earn 40 or 50,000 who save a lot. So in some extent, saving is a mindset that you will do whatever it takes to save less than to spend less than you earn. Does that make sense? So it's got to be a mindset first, like a lot of things, that we won't spend money that we do not earn.
Sometimes we think of savings as saving up for something that we've set a goal for. Other times, people who are sometimes a little more conservative will often think, I'm saving up because I'm preparing for a rainy day. Attitudes to saving, they're pretty important, aren't they?
Oh, definitely. And it's a mindset that, that's why I'm very passionate about the next generation of kids. Like, for example, in the Jewish mindset, they will give away 20%. They will actually save 10%, invest 20%, and then spend 50% of their income. So I'll just say that again because it's a bit countercultural to what we have in our modern day society. So in a traditional Jewish mindset, they would give away 20%, so very generous, save 10% for a rainy day, but then the big one, invest 20% of their money into things which are going to grow and provide a growing income stream, and then they'll spend the rest. I wonder I wonder how that would sit with modern day Australian life.
That's right. Hey, when we're talking about the Bible, Justin, and how we glean the wisdom we talk about so far as finances from the Bible, I was reflecting on this just as we're leading up to a conversation. Get your thoughts here. Because sometimes, and there's been some people have gone way off on a tangent, thinking that you apply biblical principles and that's like a get-rich-quick scheme. And that's, of course, got lots of holes in it. But while the Bible's not about getting rich quick, the wisdom that we're gleaning from the Bible is very much about how not to get poor quick. Any thoughts here on how you balance your understanding of applying biblical wisdom to your own finances?
Well, there's lots of scriptures, isn't there? There's lots in Proverbs. I'm thinking of the one that says, the lazy person or the sluggard that, will not eat. If someone, and then Jesus said, I think if someone doesn't work, they should not eat, right? So I think we need to have wisdom to apply it and put it into practice in our everyday life. And so one of the questions I've been ruminating myself is, where basically do we put our trust? Do we put it in our job? Do we put it in our bank balance? Do we put it in, a property or our super? And is that really the foundational thing which first needs to shift? And then once we start this journey about trusting God more and more and more, that to me is the centerpiece. If we don't get that right, everything else around the circumference can go astray.
Is it fair enough to say, if we're looking for biblical wisdom, the wisdom is on the side of saving rather than borrowing? Because these are the two options. If you boil it all down, either you're going to save or you're going to borrow. How do you think we should look at those?
I think so, definitely. I think there's strong biblical wisdom to not borrow for consumer things. Like, to me, it doesn't make any sense to borrow for something which depreciates, things like cars, caravans, any sort of more wants or consumer items. Why put your latest iPhone on credit? So, for example, if you can't afford to pay for an iPhone up front, perhaps it's best to wait a while till you can. Whereas, I think there's nothing wrong with debt when it's used in a productive capacity. But again, I'm thinking through a lot of things in my own life. So this is really an open conversation. When we borrow money, we borrow it from institutions, and that does give them some level of control over us. So the mortgage, the meaning of the word mortgage, I think just means something like death till death. And I think a lot of people would see their mortgage as a noose around their neck, or a millstone that they have to carry. Whereas if we don't have that debt, if we're out of debt, which I think there's a lot of biblical admonitions to get out of debt, to become the lender rather than the borrower, then that brings to it a certain level of freedom.
I mentioned in the introduction that you always have in mind a wonderful way of talking about money with the next generation in mind, raising those money-smart kids. So if our own attitudes toward debt are not right, the likelihood is we're going to be encumbering our own children, the next generation, the next generations, with the same mistakes we might make today. There's something here in a changing mindset when you apply a biblical principle.
Well, the reality is you'll just pass on what you've been learnt generally. So unless you do your own investment education, money education, and really seek out the wisdom, you'll probably pass on exactly what your parents have taught you. So, for example, the financial freedom for kids, which I'm a global ambassador, it teaches kids all the foundations of what we're talking about here. So it teaches them to save, it teaches them about the 5 levels of wealth, but even more importantly, it teaches them how to think and how to actually build their own businesses. And so I just want to again encourage all parents. I'm just mystified that, with Christmas coming up, sometimes as parents we invest in consumer things, but we don't actually invest in actually helping ourselves learn more about money and also helping our kids. to grow in that way as well.
So Christmas is coming. The pressure will be on to borrow money to buy consumable items and things that we'll do with gifts. At the same time, Justin, our mortgages are increasing, and for some, even as you say, getting to a point where they're feeling the pinch, and some it's just going too far, and there's even the potential for another interest rate rise next Tuesday. If you were trying to teach your children about debt, can you use your own mortgage experience? You can show the kids your mortgage documents, can't you? And say, this is how things are going up. That means that our debt is increasing. Is this a way, I mean, obviously if your kids are old enough to understand, but for parents teaching their children about debt, using your own mortgage document right now and what the bank is sending you, your bank statement, might be an easy way to teach kids about debt and what happens with it.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think one of the real keys is to understand that, we had years, if not a full decade of lowering interest rates. So the bigger question is, what did we all do in those times of 10 years of falling interest rates? Did we get ahead in our mortgage? Did we pay off the mortgage faster than the minimum repayments, or did we just spend the extra amount on frivolous things that don't last? So that would be the first thing I would say. You've got to have a strategy and do it before time gets tough, rather than just waiting for the impact now. So paying off more of your debt, investing into things which create an income. I wrote down a few things, just thinking proactively and creatively. So, when you're at the supermarket, the supermarkets are always having sales, right? Do we really need to buy exactly what we want, or can we just eat differently the fruit that's in season? Asking for better terms when we buy things. We are going to talk about credit cards, but if you can use credit cards wisely, get free points. Like I'm just converting my points on my credit card, $750 in vouchers. So I've got $750 in vouchers to spend on Christmas gifts for my kids that I didn't have to pay for. And another interesting one, there are lots of different ways around there to earn more money, right? And again, the question I always ask people is, are you willing to do the work? Don't just, complain when interest rates go up or something. What are you proactively doing to educate yourself? So, for example, I found out only just recently, I've only just signed up, that there's a way where you can be a part of a co-op fruit and veg buying scheme in our town. And I think most towns in Australia would have it. And the way it works is that you buy in bulk directly from the farmers. So it cuts out the middlemen, or probably two middlemen, it's Coles and Woolies, and then there are also other wholesalers. And you get your fruit and veg about 30 to 40% cheaper. And you also get to be a part of supporting a local community. So, that's me just always looking and being proactive about saying, how can I do things better? How can I actually save money? Because fruit and veg costs a family a fortune, right? But there's lots of things you can do, and that's just one of them.
This is 2020 with Neil Johnson, helping you make sense of life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective. 2020 on Vision.
Our talkback line open on 1800 316 316. What are your thoughts? Do you have a question, a comment, even a critique for our conversation today? We're talking about taming the credit card, and not just a throwaway conversation, but one that may well affect your financial future as we talk about applying biblical wisdom to how we think about saving and credit, and how we ultimately think about wealth that we might be accumulating for ourselves or for our family. Our special guest is Justin Pagotto, who leads the ministry called 2010, and we're taking calls on 1800 316 316. So, Justin, let's take a call quickly from Jason in Mooralbark in Melbourne. Hi, Jason. Welcome. Jason, are you with us? Jason, you might need to call back. Can't take that call. Thank you so much for trying, but 1-800-316-316. Hey, Justin, let's talk through some issues around different levels of income here, because, we talk about saving, we talk about borrowing and going into debt. Our whole financial makeup is made of more than that, though. You've got some ideas about different levels of our income.
Yeah, so basically what I want to encourage everyone is to think differently. There's so many ways to make money in 2022. And so a lot of the education is actually in just the retraining of our brains and the renewing of our minds. And so, for example, if you work as an employee, what can you actually do to add value to your employer so that you can actually earn more money or get a bonus? And then if you run a business, or if you are an employee who wants to start a small side business, what have you got? What gifts has God given you that you can actually turn into a service which adds value to people? Creating a little side business that can earn you regular income, and that may require a lot of work, but the reality is that anything worthwhile in life takes time, energy, and commitment. The other thing is, well, you don't even have to have your own products these days. One great form is affiliate market, where you market other people's products. So if you have products that you really enjoy and that you believe in, and that's the key, you've got to enjoy the products, believe in them, then what affiliate marketing does is where you say, I will promote these to my either database or friends or community or social network, and then you get paid a percentage of the sale, and you don't even have to, it's not even your product, and you didn't even have to fulfill the order. Does that make sense? So what I'm really asking listeners is to expand their capacity. Don't look at the problem. Look to Jesus for the solution and ask him, how do you want me to move forward? What areas do you want me to pursue? And so saving, giving, investing, and spending, all four of those areas, I think we should be constantly growing.
Interestingly, as we're talking about biblical foundations for changing the way we think, entrepreneurism very much a part of what Christians have been in their mindset for this past 2,000 years. If it wasn't, we wouldn't see the church having expanded all around the world the way that it has today, because it's happened because people have been entrepreneurial, they've been clever with money, and they've been generous with money too. Entrepreneurism, it's something that sometimes we think that, maybe a few are gifted with it, but is this something for every Christian believer to get creative and entrepreneurial, especially if you can see things tightening around your financial budget?
Look, I think there's some people who are gifted straight away business people, but I think sometimes we sell ourselves short and we just don't want to do the hard work. I would say that nearly every person who should be able to create multiple streams of income. Okay, that is my strong conviction. It may not be a huge amount of extra income, but every person should be able to find some product or some service that they can actually take on and earn extra income.
We often think about in exchanging our time for dollars, but if you are selling something, then the time factor is changed somewhat in there. So is there a creativity in the way that you might think about increasing income without actually just exchanging time?
Oh, definitely. And that's why affiliate marketing is very good, any form of education businesses. So there's the internet over the last 5 or 10 years is full of people who are making an income even when they sleep. One of my mentors, Benji Alexander from Raising Royalty, he runs a little challenge each year called the 7 Streams of Income. And it's designed based on what King Solomon said, spread your money to 7 or 8 because you do not know what trouble is coming in the land. And so, let's look at Joseph if we want to have a look at another biblical example. He was went through a process, didn't he? He had a call on his life, but he had to say yes to that process, and he gained wisdom through going through difficulties. But at the end of the day, when the time came for him to get used by God, he was in the right place at the right time, and he chose to build up in times of feast, in times of plenty, so that he had plenty in times of famine. So we need that wisdom, and we need to be having an investment plan and having a plan to do things when times are good, and also in times of when times are not so easy.
Interestingly, we are having a conversation, and it's an adult money conversation today. But these sorts of principles you're talking about, Justin, these are the sorts of things you've worked with your own children, and you've got them all starting some little sideline businesses and taking them through some learning opportunities about how they deal with money. That sort of thing's worked so well for you, and no doubt people who've been even listeners to this conversation over some time now, they've connected with you and no doubt applying some of these good principles. What sort of feedback do you get from people who are following you on your website and utilising your resources? What sort of feedback are you getting?
Yeah, the big one is just how holistic it is. So we really love to help families, what I call achieve real prosperity, and that's peace, wholeness and wellness in every area of life. I think the word prosperity has been hijacked to just talk about money, but the key feedback we always get is, Justin, you help us to look at every area of our life and say, God, what is real prosperity? And I think you've got to look at all 7 areas of life in order to actually get your life under God's lordship, under His grace, and to be able to move forward. But it takes work and effort, and that's the big thing I want to encourage people in. Like, it doesn't come in 5 minutes. You have to put time and effort into growing in anything.
We're going to be talking through some issues around credit cards after the news, but one of the main differences, you say, Justin, between the rich and the poor is how they make use of credit. I wonder if you've got a thought or two just to preempt what we'll talk about after the news.
Yes, so all I'll say is that credit card debt, where you don't pay off your credit card each month, is basically the bottom of financial wisdom. We talked about the 5 levels of wealth a few shows ago, and that's really at the bottom at debt level. So I would just counsel people, do whatever it takes not to be in credit card debt.
Justin, let's move to credit cards. This is something no doubt most listeners will have, a credit card. And there are some challenges here. I mentioned just before the news, we'd talk about these things, the differences between the way the rich see credit and the way the poor see credit. I wonder if you've got any thoughts here as we launch into this segment.
Yeah, the rich always use credit for income generation and actually asset building requirements. They don't use it for consumer goods. Well, they may pay for it, but they pay it off at the end of the month. Whereas people who want to stay in the debt trap use credit cards really for things that they don't have money for. And that's really the key. If you don't have the money and you can't pay off your credit card at the end of the month, you really should think, do I need this? And is this going to be good for me?
If I said, Justin, I'm just not good with money. I just go along with the flow. Am I actually being manipulated by credit organisations, people who want to loan money? Is there something I should be breaking out of if I'm just going along with the flow?
Well, I think I'd say you're believing a lie. If you said you're not good with money or I can't understand it, well, there's only one person who God's given responsibility to live their life, and that's all of us. So we all have to take extreme ownership for how we steward everything. And so I would say take extreme ownership over that and say I want to steward my money well, and I want to actually learn and break the lies that I'm believing in my mind and actually do some education and actually work through those issues.
Are we, in fact, under some level of manipulation that convinces us that debt is good and we love it and we love to take it on?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things which I think the main issue about repentance, and I've been looking at some information from some guys out of the States, and one of the things they say is that we have outsourced our economic affairs to the world. We need to take it back, and so they're looking at what is the degree to which we have trusted in money? What is the degree to which we've lived in pride and self-reliance in money and material things, as opposed to trust in God? And then to what extent to fear, which is concerned with worry, and to what extent is greed, never being satisfied with enough, play into things. And I think the marketing and companies will just feed those things and encourage us to go into debt to get whatever we think we need.
Simple but profound, but having a credit card, using your credit card, spending money you don't have, and that's what can potentially get us into trouble.
Absolutely. So if you are not paying off your credit card within the interest-free period, you're in real trouble. I was talking to some clients the other day, and I wasn't aware of this. They have 30,000 in credit card debts, and they're only paying off the interest. So let's say about 5,000. They had one credit card with about 11 or 12%, and another one of 20%. So if all you're doing is paying off the interest on your credit card, it's like holding a lighter up to your wallet and burning money. So what I would say there is do everything you can not to get into credit card debt, and that might mean really reviewing your spending. It might mean that doing what I said before about learning extra ways to make money, or finding different ways to save money on your household goods, looking at refinancing your mortgage if you can to lower the rates. But I just think it's if you're in credit card debt, if you've always got a credit card debt and you're needing to pay that 11, 12, up to 20% interest rate, it's just a recipe for disaster for your family.
We're taking calls on 1800 316 316. Let's take one from Jack in Wongan Hills in Western Australia. Hi, Jack. Welcome along.
Thank you.
Jack, what are your thoughts?
Day. My thought is, in Proverbs tells you, if you're in debt, you become a slave to debts.
That's right. Yeah. Slave to debt. Slavery is an interesting one, and one you ought to take seriously. Your thoughts, Justin?
Yep. So there's numerous passages. The borrower is a slave to the lender, and it's very sobering because the reality is most of our governments are in trillions of dollars of debt all around the world, of printed money, borrowed money, and this is bringing a certain sense of slavery as well.
Does, Jack, thank you. Well, Jack, stay there for a moment. Does the bank want to enslave us, Justin? Because, you're borrowing money from the bank whenever you use your credit card.
Yeah, banks only make money by turning money over, right? So the more credit card debt, the more indebted we are. They then take money, they lend it out, and then they keep lending it out, and that's the banking process. So yes, they have it's in their profit interest to get people into as much debt as possible.
Jack, in Wongan Hills in WA, Jack, thank you so much for your call. Our talkback line is open on 1800 316 316. Let's talk about the kids here when we talk about our own debts and our own use of credit cards, borrowing money from tomorrow. That you don't have to get by today. So if you fix where you're at today and the challenges you might have with credit, you may be leaving a lot more to your own children and setting them up, of course, if you can teach them some good wisdom there. Thoughts here about the next generation, our own children, and a responsibility we might feel like we have to pass on something of wealth to them.
Yeah, whatever we do, whatever we model is what our kids take on as truth and normal. If you raise your kids with an environment of scarcity, with a relationship of either fear and worry about money, or at the other end of the spectrum, greed and never being satisfied, both of those excuse me, both of those elements result in children being raised and then probably passing on to their kids attitudes, understandings, and also just the reality of living in a way which probably grieves God.
I imagine that just because it's easy to get a credit card, perhaps if you have a job, the ways that you can control that. I mean, I think listeners can hear you saying, don't rule out credit cards altogether, but you've got to be able to appreciate how to use it effectively. Otherwise, it is going to, perhaps as some is their experience, it takes control. So the thought that you might be able to control your credit cards by way of what would you do? Just to ask the bank not to have such a high lending limit. How do you actually get that control?
Well, I think the first thing that goes is self-control, right? In the way you think and you committing to only buying what you need. For example, I have 3 or 4 credit cards, but that's because I use them in my various businesses. I've got to buy things, and so I have one for the Philippines business, one for my financial business, and one for personal. And so they're all separated out. But the key thing is I always look at what I'm buying each month and making an assessment when the statement comes in. Do I really need that? And then secondly, making sure they're all paid off every month so there's not 1 cent of interest ever paid. And as I mentioned at the start of the call, I have a lot of credit card reward points, and I'm just about to cash one of them in for $750 so I can, buy my gifts for my kids out of that money at Christmas.
So I know you reflect on the difference for the rich and for those who are going to be struggling, perhaps being poor. The thought that if you can't afford it without putting it on the credit card, then you don't get it. I mean, there's discipline there that so many of us lack.
Well, it's been changed. Like I remember having a conversation with a friend of mine's dad in the 2000s, and he was a bank manager from 30 or 40 years ago, and he said back then they would only lend you used to have a 30 or 40% deposit to get a house or a car, and you had to prove that you could save, whereas these days it's gone the other ways, and banks and credit cards are just lend you all this money without you developing the discipline. And I think it's up to us to develop the discipline to actually say we're going to do it, rather than relying on using the excuse that it's someone else's fault. No transformation happens if you don't take extreme ownership.
Taking calls on 1800 316 316. Let's hear from Ian. Hello, Ian. Welcome along.
Oh, hi, Neil. How you going?
Very well. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, look, I'm not in debt. I do have a credit card, because you're talking about credit card debt, and I use that for personal and business, but I never pay any interest on it because I set up my account so when it's due it pays it all out, so I never pay any interest on it. And I know everybody's not in that position I am, but if you are, that's the way you stay out of debt. And you can use the bank's money. You can then, I get points from using the credit card that then I can use to buy other things. So that was just my contribution.
Ian, let me ask you while I've got you on the line here, do you have some special routine in your life? Is it weekly, fortnightly, monthly, where you're getting around all of your financial documents and making sure everything's in order? Have you got a routine?
Oh yes, definitely, because I run my own business, so I've got receipts and paperwork happening all the time, and my credit card gets paid off every month because you get billed for it. So I use it, and then I have the money there ready to pay the whole amount out. So it gets cleared, and there's no I'm not in any debt every month. Yeah.
Fabulous stuff, Ian. Justin, the thought of having a routine where you're coming around your finances, checking those bank statements, looking at paying your bills. I mean, some people are doing this weekly, others monthly. How do you think you should change things to get a routine in place?
Well, the main thing is to make sure that you have an amount that you save before you do anything else. So that's another thing to think through. put your money in the savings account first, divert it and spend what's less. Okay, so I think the reality is you've just got to find a way to know where your money's going firstly, and then say, how much do I want to save? How much do I want to invest every month? And then, like we said at the start of the program, spend everything else. And I think we've got it back around the wrong way sometimes, where we just spend and then try and find money to save or invest, but it doesn't work like that generally.
Ian from Warrandyte in Victoria, thank you so much for your call. Our talkback line open on 1800 316 316. Hey Justin, Christmas is coming and no doubt retailers will be hoping that we'll all be very generous and spend lots of money on gifts this year. I know that some will be thinking twice about that because of hard economic times coming. And if we want our economy to thrive, then we need to have this economy of people spending and people selling. Thoughts here for how you might approach Christmas from perhaps, from a Christian foundation of looking at finances?
Well, again, back to what I said before, what is something that you really need and what are gifts that you need versus things, that are just a week after Christmas are going to be thrown out. And so, each person needs to work that out. The other thing I would say is, rather than thinking, where am I going to find the money? Why not start in January each year and say, I need X amount, let's just say $1,000. So over 12 months, I need to put away $85 into an account or pay $85 extra off my mortgage, whichever way you look at it, so that by the time Christmas comes, I just pay the money. And as Ian just said, the money's there to be allocated for that purpose. I really think it comes down to taking ownership of your financial position, knowing where your money's going, and then actually having a plan to make sure you budget your cash flow rather than it being a surprise that you don't have any money at the end of the year.
Let me take us on a little aside here, and supposing the Treasurer is right, and I think we ought to be thinking, yes, the Treasurer is probably, trying to soften the way he's talking about it, but he's saying, yes, hard economic times are coming. I wonder if you've got any thoughts around the concept of a storehouse, because for those of us who are, in Christian families, part of a local church, thinking about the way the scriptures talk about this issue of a storehouse, how do you think of a storehouse and what we might be thinking of communally as times get tough?
Yeah, I think it's both an individual thing for all the things that we've just mentioned, but it also is a community one as well. One of the concepts that I've been thinking about is, what does it look like in a city where people, particularly business people, but it can be other people as well, contribute into a storehouse, and that can be money, time, talents, assets, that then go into doing things like getting people out of credit card debt. So where people are saying enslaved to credit card debt, you can say to them, look, we're going to pay out your credit card for you and you just pay us back the principal without any interest over X amount of time. Or what does it mean to actually fund ministries or projects which benefit the city? And that could be a whole range of things. What does it mean to actually say that we have an economy that trades with one another within the Christian community? Why not? The Jewish people do it very well, and we actually can help people. The other big thing is that we need to sort of divorce that we need money for everything. It sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we need to think through, how can we solve problems? How can we help people with or without money, and to ask for God's wisdom and his leading in how we do that. So I would say it's early days, this whole storehouse concept, but there are cities around the world where it does exist.
Wonderful and profound concept to enlarge your understanding of a definition of what the storehouse means. Sometimes, in a simple sense, we think of a storehouse by way of Scripture as being perhaps our local church, but you're saying it could be a whole lot more than that as a community benefit. We might talk about that some more on another day. Let's squeeze in some calls quickly. Nikki is in Mildura in Victoria. Hi, Nikki. Welcome.
Hi, Neil. How are you going?
Good, Nikki. What are your thoughts?
One of the parts of the conversation that hasn't been spoken about yet is Afterpay. Now, I run a small business and I don't offer Afterpay. It just doesn't feel right to me to pay for something that I could have used up before I've actually paid it off. So I was just wondering, thoughts on that.
Justin.
Well, Afterpay, I think, is a millennial's form of a credit card, isn't it? So it's basically the same thing, but it's encouraging people to basically buy things that they don't have the money for and to just normalise it. I find it fascinating that Afterpay was sold to the people who own Twitter. Who I'm forgetting at the moment, Jack Dorsey and his group. Anyway, it was sold for something like $30 billion, but they'd never made a profit in their life after pay. So it's just fascinating, isn't it, that we've created this culture that exists around buying things now for things that we don't need. And I think credit cards and Afterpay, ZipPay, it's the same thing, really.
We haven't got a lot of time. A very quick thought on the Christian business person who's utilising all of these credit methods, whether it's obviously credit cards or Afterpay. Not wrong to use them, but the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the user.
Well, that's what Nikki has just said. That's another thing which we haven't talked is, what is the ethical standpoint about offering credit for consumer things as a Christian business owner? And I think that they're real questions that each Christian business owner must think through, really. Do we want to be part of enslaving people into debt? That's a good question, Nikki.
I think we just dived into a very deep topic there, and we haven't got time to expand on that today.
I don't think it's a 2-minute conversation.
No. We might come back to that. We're not afraid to talk about these things. Nikki, thank you for raising that. Fabulous. Let's take one more call. Time is running so short. Let's hear from Charmaine in Esperance in Western Australia. Hi, Charmaine.
Hi, good morning to you guys. I just want to quick say another positive thing to people out there if they're battling with credit card. What my husband and I do is that we always take money from our savings and put it in our credit card, that our credit card is in a positive, and then we only spend then what is in the positive. And, as soon as it gets close to the zero balance again, then we actually take more money from savings and put it in, and that way we're never in debt and you don't have interest on your card either, and at the same time you're starting to build up a lot of points that you can use.
There is a wise way of using, I think that's a debit card. Your thoughts here, Justin?
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, because one of the lies or the challenges is that we think that credit card is money that's ours, whereas it's not. Whereas in the what you're doing there, I think it's brilliant, because you're seeing that what you're spending is actually your money. So your saving account's going down because you put it on the credit card. So you're actually visually seeing that it's actually your money you're spending, whereas there can be a tendency to just put things on the credit card, see it go up and not really make that connection that it's actually our money coming out of our savings account. So well done. Good strategy.
Charmaine, thank you so much for your call. We won't be able to take any more calls because time has run out. But just to talk about how connecting with you, Justin, might be a useful, beneficial thing, especially for those listeners today who have children and they're interested in how they affect the next generation with the ways that they talk about and deal with money. So the ministry that you lead is called 1010, based on John 10:10. The website is 1010life.com.au. So for listeners, write that down, the number 10, life.com.au. You've got some free tips on raising happy, more confident children. People can subscribe to a mailing, a newsletter with you, Justin. Just explain what sort of resources people can access from you today.
Yeah, so if you go to 1010life.com.au, pop in your details there. There's a few things we give away. One is the top 10 things parents need to teach their kids and teens to stay out of debt. That is probably the one I would really recommend. Like when you sign up, it goes to a freebies page and you can get about 6 or 7 freebies. One of them is that guide. The other thing as well is, look at your internet, mobile, energy bills. That's one of the ways that we serve families, is getting them better deals on those things. So what if you could get $40, $50, $60 a month more in your pocket because you just simply changed who you went through? So there's plenty of good things there, and sign up. It'll take you to a freebies page, and just hit connect and connect with me on the areas that you've got interest in.
And on Facebook, you can join the 1010 Family Life Facebook group. And just great insights as always. Look forward to our next conversation already. That's the number 1010life.com.au. Justin Pagotto, thank you so much for taking some time and sharing your thoughts with us today on 2020.
My pleasure, always a pleasure, and the biggest gift you can give me is just implement the stuff that I talk about. So that would give me great joy.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.